I'm Lisa Forrest with our sponsor finance group for Live Oak Bank. I provide senior debt for search acquisitions. I provide debt for both self-funded on the SBA route and also conventional loans for the traditional route. And I think we're going to tend to talk more about sort of the self-funded route, more of the sort of SBA route today. That's at least how our esteemed CEO panelists went on their path. Except for Dave, you went a little bit different. But anyway, but mostly it's probably sort of an SBA route today. Our panelists today, starting with Dave Froelich, he's the CEO of MindMarker. We have Liz Settimi, who's got a little bit of an interesting story. She actually exited from her successful startup operations in the bar method, exited her 5 locations, and now she's back on an ETA track. And then we have Mark Hoffman, who is CEO of Larson Packaging Company, and Kim Lahti, who is CEO of Lab Exhibits and Services. We're going to start, first of all, by having our panelists share a little bit about their personal history, including how they heard about ETA and how they decided it was the right path for them. So why don't we start with you?
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me? Yeah. I'm Dave Froelich. As she mentioned, I'm the CEO of MindMarker. In terms of just how I got started with this process, I started looking for a company to purchase about 3 years ago now, and was able to find MindMarker last year in July and closed on the acquisition November 30th. I was actually introduced to this program from the Booth's Major Gifts group that happened to call me for a donation, and then talked about Alex Hodgkin and all the work he was doing here. And so the program was absolutely instrumental in getting my deal done, both from the structuring of it and also the financing of it. So, and as she said, that it's a little bit different, my path, but we'll talk about that in a few minutes.
Hi, I'm Liz. So quick personal history. After Kellogg, I went into brand management at Clorox out in the Bay Area and did retail marketing with Peet's Coffee as well. And at that time, I had always known that I wanted to have my own business. And so this was quite a long time ago. Even back in 2006, 2007, I was looking for a business to buy. And at that time, and I was a self-funded person at that time, so I didn't have a big budget, and I was looking around, and I just didn't find anything that I was interested in. And at that very same time, I discovered a workout called the Bar Method, which at the time was very, very new, and became a franchisee of that company and took the Bar Method to Chicago, had a territory here, and owned and operated multiple locations. That was a long time ago, before the boutique fitness craze happened. And so I now, as Lisa said, just exited that business in April, and I'm now looking for a small company to buy in the Chicago area, and I'm very geographically focused. And I think that I may be days away, hopefully, from coming together, putting something together.
Good morning. I'm Mark Hoffman, CEO of Larson Packaging Company, and we've mentioned Alex Hodgkin. He likes to say he found me in the wild. That I was a 91 Booth graduate, so I might be an old guy up here. And I bought my company in 2001, and I'd never heard of ETA at the time, but kind of my path was after Booth. I'd worked for Booz Allen. I was in the United States, then down in South America for several years, came back and realized that just didn't like consulting anymore. And the internet was booming and startups were happening. I'm in the Bay Area, and tried the high-tech world. I had some senior marketing roles doing that, and realized I just didn't like high-tech people. And had to do some, no offense to any of you high-tech people. It's kind of tough living in the Bay Area not liking high-tech people. But I thought that I needed to do some self-assessment, wasn't sure what I wanted to do, and I looked at a book called In Transition from the Harvard Business School Club. And it was really interesting. Went through the exercises, looked at, they have a synthesis of what colors your parachute, and I realized that what I really wanted was not to work for the man anymore, and buy my own business, and I started a search, looked at some other small businesses to be part of a small business, but ultimately found a broker that was able to find me a business that I self-financed with SBA, and that was 18 years ago. We've been growing. We're now in the Bay Area serving customers, and expand our product line. We're also, we have our own location in Memphis, Tennessee area, and serving customers through partners in China and the UK as well. So And I think a little different than I've heard from other people. The newbies in ETA is they want to buy a company and then flip it, and I don't know what they do after that. But for me, it's been the long-term deal. So I'm not sure what my exit's going to be, if there ever will be one. But it's it's a lifestyle.
Good morning, everybody. Lab exhibits, booth graduate 93, and I had first heard about ETA last April, and that was about 7/8 of the way through of my acquisition at the time, and so I came and attended the symposium back in April, and it really was a life changer for me because of the fact that there was a number of roadblocks, hurdles getting through the 11th hour activities of closing a business, and hearing the stories pushed me through, gave me the energy, gave me the vision to move forward. So that's how I heard about ETA. My background was in banking for a number of years at BMO Harris here in Chicago, and a number of different roles, and I never really understood. I had a number of responsibilities and things over the years, but I never really knew how it all came together. And so it has all come together in owning a business, and it's a fabulous experience, and I wouldn't trade it for anything in the world. And getting to know people, getting to know change culture, and working with people is just a fabulous experience. And all the things I learned in banking, I learned good and bad things, and now I get to try those things out and change things, and boy, what an experience. So if you're considering it, by all means, go for it.
Great, thank you very much. And Kim, I can hear you getting a little emotional there, which it's, being an entrepreneur is an emotional. I actually own my own small business as well, by the way. I've had my own SBA loan and a banker. I come from a family of entrepreneurs, and I've spent my whole career helping business owners finance. It is a dream, and so I can hear emotion in your voice, and that's amazing. So coming maybe on to the next question. So what, the idea of mid-career, in what ways do you believe that having maybe a little bit more resume, a little bit more experience on that resume in life and in business, in what ways do you think that has sort of shaped and helped you on your ETA path and journey? Dave, why don't we start with you again? We'll just kind of go back down.
I guess in terms of just the experience, when you get in front of investors, which I had to do because I didn't self-fund, I think you have a little more credibility when you can talk about business experience that you've had. But I did something different. I went from, like everyone on the panel, doing something completely different to CEO of a company that was not in financial services. I was a Wall Street person, and then I was becoming the CEO of a software company. But my network actually helped because I was able to attract another Booth graduate, Tom Ernst, who was the head of software banking at Goldman Sachs, to help me with the due diligence process. And so having that network that you'd have as a more seasoned business person was really helpful in this process.
I agree, for sure. I think it's been very helpful being a little bit more seasoned. There are a couple of different ways. Probably first, just presenting myself to, even before that, looking at business opportunities and knowing myself a little bit better, knowing my strengths, knowing what I'm interested in doing, and being able to quickly look at an opportunity and decide whether it's something that I would enjoy, whether it's something I would be able to add value to. So I feel like it's helped me be able to look and then move on from different opportunities or look more closely at opportunities that are a good fit. And then secondly, presenting myself to sellers and just saying, hey, I've actually run this type of business before. I've had this type of experience for quite a long time. And because, of course, sellers feel like this is their baby, or many of them feel like this is their baby, and is this going to be a person who's going to be able to take it forward successfully and build on their legacy? And so that's been very helpful as well, giving some credibility to my ability to do that. And then finally, just a team in terms of bankers, attorneys, accountants. I already have an attorney, I already have an accountant, people I've worked with for many years before and have even done transactions with before. So I'm not having to find all these people and establish relationships with them and then start working on something from scratch.
Yeah, I agree. I think that having some experience before doing this was critical for me, and I think is a key success factor for a lot of people. That, I mean, first of all, I think graduating from business school, I knew a lot of book conceptual things. You know, we did cases, everybody had an internship, but I just, maybe this is just me, I wasn't mature enough to be able to run a business and be able to deal with the human resources issues that I'm constantly dealing with now. I mean, we heard that earlier in the keynote that you know, you're just constantly dealing with people and change and unexpected situations and not having any kind of, you know, real broad senior work experience at the time, I think would have been difficult for me, and I don't know that I would have had the maturity to be able to deal with it. And then I feel fortunate because I was in management consulting, you know, working in strategy and operations in the U.S. and in Latin America. I had a lot of experience working with entrepreneurial type companies, family businesses, as well as Fortune 100 companies, and across a broad range of the value chain. And so when it came to different issues, I was able to analyze it and understand it very quickly. So whether it was, and surprisingly, the most important skill I have right now that I use all the time is accounting, which I never thought I would use, you know, outside of business school. But, you know, there's the accounting and the finance, being able to deal with senior people, make presentations, get to the kind of the nuts of an issue, you know, be able to make quick decisions with little analysis. And I think that, you know, I learned in consulting, but then also really know now that just life is not a spreadsheet. You know, you get out of school, you're like, here's my spreadsheet, and that's what happened when I bought my business. I had my nice spreadsheet, and revenue is going to grow, and I'm going to be profitable. And of course, the spreadsheet had nothing to do with reality once the business was actually acquired. So, you know, you really have to get into it, and I think just having that experience and being able to adjust was critical, at least in my case.
Yeah, having a broad range of experiences, it's always been my mindset to not be pigeonholed or be told that, okay, that's all you know. You only know accounting, you only know marketing, you only know finance, you only know sales. It's important to have a broad background. And that enabled me to, as Mark and Liz just said, to be able to assemble a great group of people, having accountants, having lawyers, having business advisors, brokers that you can deal with, a lot of people skills, a lot of soft skills, being able to negotiate, being able to manage different people. Like and again, when you have a lot of different experiences, you learn to get comfortable being uncomfortable. And working with a number of people constantly, different personalities. Like in the business I'm in now, I knew nothing about the trade show business. And then you're dealing with people who have 30 years of experience, and they're looking down on you saying, you don't have the experience, you don't know anything. And I heard in the marketplace recently where it said, yeah, somebody just acquired Lab Exhibits. They have a lot of money, but they don't have any experience. And so, you know, both of them are false. And so just going through that process of being able to understand people and being able to read people, because people are coming at you at all different angles and different levels, and just understanding and working through that and having the maturity, as Mark said, about being able to handle those HR issues, the people issues, because they're constantly coming at you, and having that composure and the ability to work with all kinds of different people is critical, the soft skills. But it's also important to have those accounting skills, having those finance skills, knowing where the numbers are, knowing the cash flow is critical, knowing where the cash is, and understanding the expenses. And so yeah, it's a lot of different experiences, and you utilize those and bringing them all together. And when you, as Liz said about assembling a team, you want to have a great team. You want to have really, really good people around you that you can trust, because they're helping you, and you want them to be involved and utilize their expertise.
Thank you. So regarding timeframes for search, I know certainly in the traditional track we hear a 2-year search process. I think that sort of timeframe is sort of thrown out there and just generally understood that it's going to take 2 years. When we were prepping for this conversation today with you all, we talked about, well, For the alternate track, or for more of a self-funded track, is 2 years, is that the norm? Does it have to take 2 years? Are there some things that your mid-career ETA choice, can you be bringing something to the table, given your experiences, that might shave off that 2-year search time frame? So what are your thoughts on that? I know we talked about that a lot.
So in my case, it was actually pretty close to 2 years in terms of finding a business that I wanted to purchase, and that was just I'd found a company after about 9 months, and convinced the seller, another software company that I didn't get, that I was the right person to buy the business and to operate it going forward, but that the seller ended up pulling it off the market after about 5 months of due diligence that I had done and work with them, and she felt that she could get a better price for the business, which she ultimately did. So that extended my search, because I would have been done in about 8 or 9 months otherwise. So it ended up being about that 2-year time frame for me.
I have been looking since the end of May, and if the deal that I'm working on right now goes through, it will be in January, so it'll end up being about 9 months. And I think, there's nothing wrong with something taking 2 years. I personally did not want to spend that much time in this time of my life looking. I wanted to get in there and get going again, and I kind of think of myself kind of analogous to maybe an evening MBA student. So I did the full 2-year MBA, and soaked up all the experiences, and it was great. And now in this process, I think of myself as kind of an evening student. So I'm here to get in, get out, and I don't need to soak up the experience quite as much. And so the part of the criteria that I am using are, is this a person who's ready to sell? So I've relied primarily on brokers and my network to find businesses that are already for sale. I have not been reaching out to people thinking, is this person maybe someday thinking about selling their company? So that's just been a part of my search, and I wanted to get something done, kind of around this time frame. So hopefully it will happen.
I think my situation might have been a little bit different because I was not looking for a business that I could grow into a platform and strike it rich and build a huge business. I was really looking to get out of the rat race, and I had just gotten married. I had my first child on the way, which maybe is not a good time to break off and buy your own business, but we can talk about that in a minute. But and it was right after 9/11 too. But my whole search and closing on the deal, I think, was probably about 9 months, 10 months, something like that. And I was voluntarily unemployed. I was kind of in transition, like I said, and decided I didn't want to be working. I did a little consulting work on the side to keep things going. But I just wanted to, there's one approach where you could just buy a job. So I didn't want a job, I wanted a company. But I didn't necessarily think it had to be this big deal. So I wasn't very, honestly, for being a strategy consultant, I wasn't very strategic about the business I was looking for. But I knew I wanted to do low-tech manufacturing, and I liked wood, and I wanted to get into that. And I had to stay in the Bay Area because that's where I was setting down roots. So I was pretty limited in what I wanted to do, but I was, for better or worse, I was both living off my savings, but that was also my capital to buy a business, so I had to go fast. And ultimately, I had a push to close, which caused some problems for myself. Ultimately, it all worked out, but because of the situation and because of what I wanted to do, I was able to find something pretty quickly and jump on it. And as I see other searchers now, there's a lot of due diligence and there's a lot of rejecting deals and things like that, and probably for good reason. But there's no deal's perfect. So I feel like for me, it was just like found a deal, it was going to work. I thought it'd be a good one. The spreadsheet seemed to work. And and I jumped on it, and it's never. The seller knows a lot more about their business than you're going to ever know. So none of them are going to be perfect. So I just kind of took the plunge, and kind of that's where I went. So I was able to go pretty quickly.
Yeah, and every situation is different. I was able to have a time period of. It took me 3 years to close on the business. The time when I found the business to closing took about 7 or 8 months, but I had a number of other deals looking at prior, and one went to the 11th hour, and finally it closed. So that was a setback, but a lot of valuable lessons learned there. But every deal's different, and sometimes, as Mark was talking about, your finances are different, so you have to maybe move quicker. But I was had at a position of having a degree of some time, and I wanted the right fit, and I wanted the right numbers, so that it felt it was the right thing for me to do. But every situation's different. And if you are doing the funding where you are doing a search and someone's paying for you to do that search, you're under great pressure. I didn't have that. I was a self-funded deal, so again, I could take my time and look for the right deal. And it was always going through that process, trying to say, okay, is some deal better than no deal, or do I continue, being patient as long as I could? And so it was that balance, constantly asking yourself, okay, they're not all lined up here. As Mark said, no deal's perfect, but is it close enough? Is it something that could happen? But you work through that, and you're just you're dealing with those pressures, so to speak.
So I'd like to get 2 more questions in. We got the 10-minute mark before Q&A, so I wanted to get 2 more questions in. So the 2 questions are about the other people in your life, the support you get at this stage in your life to embark upon now to kind of put the brakes on and take a left or a right turn or whatever the turn is you're taking. So the people in your life and how important that was, and then also sort of your one-sentence advice to people in the room that would love to be in a CEO seat. So it's kind of a 2-part question in 10 minutes. What is the second? Advice. Advice to people in the room that want to be in the CEO seat. So kind of people in your life, how that impacted you on your search, and then your one-sentence advice.
I guess my situation's probably a little unique in terms of other people in my life. I was actually, in the middle of my process, I ended up going through a divorce, which wasn't a great timing because of the way assets can't be used once they're locked down in a divorce process for collateral for a business deal. So I ended up changing my funding sources to equity financing versus using the Small Business Administration, which Liz and I talked about. But I was able to convince my now ex-wife that what I was doing, my strategy was sound, and she agreed with it. And so she is going to be, she will have half of an interest in my business going forward, in my stake. In terms of advice, I would say try not to waste time with, a lot of investors will want to talk with you, but make certain that they invest in the type and size of companies that you're looking at. Someone will tell you, yeah, we will do software, and then you realize that they've only done sort of low-tech business services stuff, and this is beyond them, and they'll waste a lot of your time. So make sure that that is sound. And then you had mentioned, in terms of companies that are really for sale, we hadn't talked about Axial.net in this conference at all, but that's what I use to find my deal. Most companies of any size, private companies for sale in the U.S. and Europe are listed on that site. I won't go into detail on how it works, but that's Peter Lehrman's company, and I use that. And you're able to track companies you're looking at very easily through that system. I looked at 600 companies in those 2 years before I found MindMarker. But I would say use it. Can you repeat that name again? I think a few people didn't hear that. It's Axial.net, A-X-I-A-L.net. And they have, I think, 20,000 customers that are both sellers of businesses and buyers of businesses. So most of the largest private equity firms are members of that for deal flow. But just that's what I would certainly use.
In my situation, I was running the bar method business already when I met my husband. So fortunately, he's only known me as a person who has her own business. And so saying that I wanted to do this again afterwards seemed like a natural thing. So that was very fortunate. In terms of advice, I'm not sure. I would say, you can make it happen if you want to badly enough. And I think also I'll just say one thing for women specifically. I think that this is a great way to kind of have a really senior, meaningful position, but still be able to be kind of in control of all the things that you are doing. And I think I'm sure that's the case for guys too, but I think particularly for women, it's a great path.
So I think for me, it was absolutely critical, the support I had from my wife. I didn't have a lot of family around me in the Bay Area, and we just moved back from Peru, actually. She's from there. And so we'd been married 2 years, and she's been in the country a short time and didn't see me much because I was consulting a lot of the time and traveling. And as I mentioned, she was, during the search, she was pregnant, and then we had our daughter October 23rd, and I closed December 14th, 2001 on the business, and that was, of course, after 9/11, 2001. And as we're going through this, I just kept asking her. I said, and at one point I was like, I think we should do this. What do you think? That's pretty risky though. And I'll just never forget. She said, what's the worst that could happen? We'll be poor, and I've been poor before. And so that just kind of tipped us over and made us do it. And I think that's kind of my advice, is that you have to know you want to do it. So. I've talked to searchers and that are out of school, and some of them have said, well, I think I'm thinking consulting or private equity or investment banking or ETA. And my first response to them is, then you don't want to do ETA, because you really have to want to do it. I mean, you have to take the risks, and you have to be able to invest your 100% of your time and effort and capital and family life into the business, at least initially. And it really, it can grind on you, and things don't always go the way you want them to, although frequently they do. So it has to be a lifestyle and the kind of career that I think you want to be able to do it. So you really have to do some introspection.
Yeah, having a very supportive wife. My wife is here, a Booth graduate, 93 as well. And so having a great support system, advisors are critical, so that people you can trust and bounce ideas off. I love collaboration and getting things done as a team, and having that network is just so important. So that was a big factor in terms of having that support system and having people that you can go to and bounce ideas off of and keep you on the rails, so to speak.
Wonderful. Well, I think that concludes some of the comments that we had prepared, so we'll open it up to Q&A. And then what's the best way? Are we getting microphones around? Oh, God, okay.
Hi, thank you. So at the risk of dominating, I have 4 questions. So I think I've had too much caffeine.
Pick one.
I'll throw it out there. You guys cherry pick what you want. The first one is, I bought my first company in 2004, and ETA was not a thing, okay? No one had said search fund in the state of Missouri. I know a lot of you guys are in that same seat. My question is, what resources did you use to sort of figure out the what and the how to sort of pull this all together? And what do you wish that you had, right? So that's question number 1. The other is, very quickly, what do you feel about a part-time search? What do you feel about MBAs graduating from their program and buying a business right out of school? I want to know your thoughts on that. And then also, I'm wondering if the size of the business in a mid-career acquisition kind of changes in terms of what you see in other search funds. Thanks.
So why don't we have one person each take one of those questions? Whoever wants to do that, so we can get a few more questions in.
I guess I can start. In terms of resources used, I used other Booth graduates and other people in my network. Like I mentioned Tom Ernst, so I'll give you a little bit more detail on him. He was a Booth graduate, I think also from 95 or so, 96, and his experience in software as the head of banking, of software banking at Goldman Sachs, gave my deal credibility, right? So I was a Wall Street person, but I don't know HTML coding like he does, and his team was able to review the code set and give investors some comfort that they weren't walking into some kind of a landmine. So I would say resources from your network is something that I utilize very heavily, and also like for deal structuring, other CEOs that had done this, I had several in my network that have bought businesses, and structuring the deal is key, which these guys will certainly say as well, that things in your network are the best for, using that is important.
I'll speak to the part-time search. That is essentially what I was doing the first time. I was working full-time, and I didn't have a specific timeline. I was looking for a business, and I did end up working until very, very close to the end, all the way through. But it was a different time in my life. I was single and just had more time in my day to spend on my job and then also my search.
Sorry to stick you with one, but I think I'm going to take the size of business. I think it sort of depends on your model. That in my particular case, and I think some of the other ones here, if you're using your own capital and using SBA financing, there's only a certain size deal that you could finance, and that's maybe in the $3 to $5 million range, maybe even a little bit less. And that's a challenge because you're going to unless you have a lot of capital, you're probably going to be capital constrained and cash constrained early on, unless the business is generating a lot of cash early, and it makes it tough. So in my case, I was you have to be highly leveraged. So I was it was really, I didn't think about it as ETA. I thought about it more like I'm doing a little mini LBO is really what I was doing, and it worked out. I will touch on that related to that. The first question though is what I wish I had in terms of resources were all the resources that are available now. I mean, it's just incredible in terms of the providers of capital, the partners, all the people that can be there to help you. I mean, I had to work with an attorney and write up all my own documents, buy-sell agreements, all those kinds of things, and I had no idea. So, but there's all kinds of templates and those kinds of things that are available now. By the way, just to go back to the size of the business, that was a decision too. So I wanted to self-fund and have control. But if you don't mind bringing in outside capital and having a little piece of your business, you can, a good strategy would be to look for a much larger business. They're easier to run. One time, I was talking to a private equity guy early in my after I bought my business, and he said, it's a much easier to run a $20 million business than a $2 million business. And it's really true because you have much more resources, you have a bigger team, you've got more cash, all those kinds of things. So something to think about as you think about, what you might want to do.
And I'll just say, as far as the deal size goes from a financing standpoint, from when you did it, Mark, now the SBA loan size is now $5 million. And not to be a commercial for Live Oak, but we have a junior debt piece we can add on with SBA, so we can actually get into sort of an 8, 9, maybe even a $10 million transaction actually using SBA. And now there are so many investors out there that will kind of take a smaller piece or invest in more of a self-funded search, and they're okay with giving you control. So I think the model of ETA has absolutely evolved, and so there's ways to maximize a size and still fit in a highly leveraged transaction.
Back to the question about getting an MBA, go right into business. That depends on how passionate they are and what they want to achieve and where they're wanting to go. In my own case, I wished I had done it 20 years ago, but I wasn't prepared. As Mark said, I needed to go through some things to get more mature, more experience, broader capability. To say that you have to have time or X number of years doing something or different roles, there's no prescribed route. It's all depending on when you feel you're ready and if you want to take that plunge. But I would say again, in my own case, experience sooner rather than later.
All right, over. The question was, can you speak to your experiences working with business brokers?
Well, I can certainly answer that. So I mentioned the Axial Network. Companies that are of a smaller size generally are represented by business brokers on that system. They were helpful in terms of once they know what you're looking for, if you're specific with them, they will call you on deals that, you're never going to get something at a great bargain price. I don't know with the experience of the panelists, but I found that every deal of size is marketed. There's no way to go to an accountant and find something that you're the only buyer that's looking at it. But I found them helpful. I don't know what other experiences have been.
Well, I actually had, I guess, a broker. He called himself a small investment bank, but he's really a business broker. And I signed him up to do a buy-side search. So he had a process where he had a form, you fill out, and what are you looking for? And so we were able to work together to figure out what kind of business I was looking for, and paid a small fee for him to do that. And it was worth it for me because ultimately that was the business, he found me the business that I bought. Happened to be one that he represented too, which is the downside because, his interests weren't aligned with mine. And the way I found him was through a bulletin board or, Biz Buy Sell or something like .net. I looked at a business and it's like, that business is too big for you. You're not going to be able to buy it. And I said, well, let's talk. And that was actually the business I ended up buying at a later date. But the downside was, this particular guy didn't have that many resources, and he wasn't able to cast his net very far or deep, so we weren't able to look at a lot of deals. And back then, there weren't a lot of resources to find deals, like Axial.net or some of the business buying sites. But the benefit is that if you're working with a broker, they know the business is for sale. So, there are a lot of searchers that waste a lot of time trying to find a proprietary deal that, the business just isn't up for sale, or the owner has an unrealistic valuation.
And I know, Liz, you've had experience working with brokers on your current search.
I haven't worked closely. I haven't had a buy-side broker. I have been in touch with some brokers on businesses that are for sale, and I've had kind of mixed results in terms of people who are, some brokers have been excellent, some have been less so, but I guess they are helpful in that yes, a business is for sale when you're dealing with a broker, so that's for sure a positive.
Questions back there?
I just wanted to get a better feel for what your capital stacks look like, and then kind of just governance and control of the businesses that you purchased.
So I guess I'll talk about governance. I actually bought MindMarker with a group of investors, so we're a traditional C Corp, listed in Delaware like most companies, and we have a board-led structure with five board seats. I've filled. There's 3 of those filled now, and I'll be adding 2 operating people. So I'm not sure if you guys have boards, but they've been fantastic in terms of resources and ideas that they brought to the table for me, and I'm looking forward to those other 2 seats being filled.
The opportunity I'm looking at is pretty small, and I am self-funded, so I'm doing, partial equity of my own, a seller's note that's worth about 20%, and then SBA for the rest.
Mine was similar. I had about, I guess I did it back of the envelope here, but about 15% equity, 10% seller note, which, I wish it would have been larger in retrospect, and about 75% debt. Most of it was SBA. But there was a community development loan that was in there as well that was subordinated, so that was helpful. And it's funny, I had about a $1.3 million SBA loan, which at the time was the largest SBA loan in the region. So to hear that they can do, $5 to $10 million now is really interesting. In terms of governance, for better or worse, it was, it's sort of like just me. I had some friends and family investors. They don't really pay attention, and I don't have a board, but it would have been nice to have more resources, perhaps, or people that I could rely on for advice and help. At some point, I mentioned my wife was very supportive and helpful. Then after a while, she's like, I don't want to hear about it anymore. So, you got to find other resources you can talk to, because you really can't talk about your business problems with the people, or issues or major decisions with the people in the business necessarily until you build that team that you need.
Yeah, in my situation, I have I put up 20% of the deal and finance the rest through SBA. I have the essentially a quasi-advisor board of friends who have run their own businesses or are running their own businesses that we meet and get together and discuss challenges and opportunities, as well as the fact of the owner that I bought the business from. He has a consulting agreement for a year, and he's a close advisor, and we frequently get together and collaborate and lay out a strategy in terms of moving forward.
And then I'll just kind of differentiate. If we're going SBA, the capital stack is generally 75 to 80% SBA leverage debt, and then the combination of buyer equity and seller note. If we're doing a conventional non-recourse loan for the traditional track, then it's typically, say, 40% equity, 30 to 40% senior debt, and the differential in a seller roll and seller note, kind of 30-30-30, 40-40-20. So a lot less leverage on the traditional track. And then On SBA loans, when we're doing self-funded route, we're getting personal guarantees, and so these are the boards of directors, really. I mean, we're really relying on the people in the CEO seat. When we're doing a traditional conventional, then we're really drilling down more on who the board of advisors are and who the directors are, because it's a non-recourse loan. So, and I think we have time for one more question? If I could add. Oh, yeah, of course.
I just wanted to add something on a resource that we just came across that we used. One of my investors is a retired Bain Capital partner who's a Sloan School graduate, actually, from MIT. And he introduced us to what's called the Entrepreneur Lab program. It's a joint program between the Harvard Business School and the Sloan School at MIT. So MindMarker was picked one of 8 companies for them to work with this semester out of 75 applicants. So we have 6 graduate students working on a project for us, and for us it's a customer advisory council that we're putting together. But that type of resource is available to you once you buy a company. Get out there and see what's available for free, and these people are brilliant. They actually have experience in software and HR software, which we're in, so that's another thing available.
And then I guess we should definitely mention the Polsky Center, since we're being hosted by them as well. Great resource. How are we doing on time? Okay, great. Go ahead. Mm-hmm. He's talking about potential consulting agreements with the seller from a transition, risk, and mitigation perspective.
Some of the nuances associated with the consulting agreement I have in place. The first, it's a 1-year contract. The first it just is work. So being able to have, it's almost like early on I kept telling them, I said, let's rip up the consulting agreement, let's put something together in terms of a sales agreement where, because he's really focused on sales and driving sales. So, he's very flexible, and in fact, we just had a conversation this past week about, okay, I'm going down to 1 day next month. Do you want me to stay longer? Do you want me to come in, continue coming in? So it's very flexible, and having that type of flexibility is critical, and it's based upon an hourly rate, and to pay him weekly for his expenses.
I have maybe a little different perspective, and I think it just depends on who the sellers are and what you want to do with them. So if they're looking to exit, I mean, I've seen other deals where the sellers are going to stay on and take on a sales role or business development, or do something to push the business forward, and especially in larger deals. And I think that's that's great. If the seller's just looking for transition and getting out, then in my personal view is to get them out as fast as you can. I mean, I had in my deal, it was really like 90 days of training, and they were on, and that was maybe even a little long for me. I kind of got all the knowledge I could out of them, and then at some point, you need to be the leader. So, and I was advising someone on a deal that was space similar to mine, and they were working it out where the sellers were going to stay on for, I think, 6 months or a year, and I advised them to make it shorter because the sellers were actually causing problems to close the deal, and were going to cause problems after the deal too. And the employees, depending on the type of company it is, are always going to look at the previous owners as like, oh, well, what do you think I should do? And you need to be the leader who's now got firm and clear control of this company, and not have any kind of conflict or misaligned incentives or anything like that. So I think it's important to try and make that transition pretty quickly.
And I would say so the founder of MindMarker, Anthony Worth, has stayed on with me. So there are 2 brothers that have bought the business from Anthony and his brother Case. They're Dutch with American citizenship as well. But one of the things you have to be aware of, especially in our situation, was who owns the intellectual property. MindMarker is a reinforcement strategy methodology based on Anthony's book. So we had to go through a lot of, jumping through hoops to understand how that would work, going forward. He is continuing to work with us, and he's great. And so I was never looking to have him exit the business. We have a really strong working relationship. We talk every day. He's based actually in Amsterdam. But I'll tell you, though, you have to really have somebody that's an expert in domain. We used Wilmer Hale as our corporate attorney, and they spent a lot of time just hashing this out with the seller and with me in terms of coming up with an IP agreement that would work for everyone.
Great. Well, thank you very much to our panelists. Loved all the perspectives, and everyone came at it from just a little bit different direction on some aspects, and then you were all aligned on others, so it was really fascinating. So Dave, Liz, Mark, and Kim, thank you very much for your time. I know you're really busy with your companies. Thank you.